noting. So thank you, James and Emma, for that. We'll note that, and we'll move on to the next item of the agenda, which is item 7, budget and medium-term financial strategy. Okay, again, this is in the name of Councillor Radley, who will be ably assisted by Emma Foy. So, James, would you introduce the item for us?
Yeah, this is by far the more interesting, certainly challenging financial paper that's before us today. And this is reflecting the budget which we will need to set for 2022-23 and our medium-term financial strategy. And it will come as no surprise to anyone in the room, because we have discussed it many times in overview and scrutiny and in this forum as well, that there is a reasonable expectation that, as well as the various pressures that we have, we also face challenges in terms of the new homes bonus and what the government intends to do with that. And we are very conscious that the government has a levelling up agenda where it is looking to channel funds to councils in the north, and therefore we should be planning for a worst case scenario where the funding that we get from central government is much reduced. And therefore a key component of this paper is to bring forward a initial tranche of savings which we have as tier 1 and tier 2. The tier 1 savings are almost, I would say, a given that we'd want to do them. Why wouldn't we? Tier 2 are things that we probably want to do because we'll probably almost certainly need to do them, but we will need to do some more research and we will need to build business cases to explain what the savings actually would be and what those savings would actually mean in terms of impact. And one of the requests today is that Cabinet give their blessing to driving forward the generation of those business cases. I would like, with your indulgence, Mr. Chairman, I don't know when you want to do that in the proceedings, to actually suggest another package of work for a business case to be drawn up, and would like to have it added to the list, if that's okay. Okay, so before we do questions then, you're going to be moving 2.1 to 2.7 and you're going to add a 2.8 for us. What I would like to do is add to the list of business cases in tier 2 an additional business case that I believe is certainly worthy of investigation by the council. It actually falls into Councillor Cockerell's remit in that it's a place related matter. But again, I don't believe it will come as a surprise to Councillor Cockerell because we have discussed it at some length. Okay, thank you very much. Right, okay, so shall we go to questions then? So who has some questions on agenda item 7? Councillor Quarterman, Richard, please. Yeah.
Just checking my understanding here. What we are being asked to approve tonight is the level 1 and level 2, taking those further, researching them, putting the resource behind to deliver those potential savings. We have other items that you've described as tier 3, tier 4, but that have been discussed in the past, but we're not necessarily taking them forward or agreeing to them at this point. They still, however, remain as future options that we could consider should we need to. And as long as I understand that, that's still an option that we've got open to us, what we're basically saying here tonight is, yes, press ahead with the level 2 ones, and we'll come back to the level 3 ones should we need to at some later date. Then that's fine. But I'm just checking that is my understanding. That's correct. Yes.
That's right. So the way that we've done this is to take the, I suppose, easier savings first as level 1, to seek approval for those. Level 2 needs some business cases drawing up and investigating. Whilst we're doing that and bringing those forward in line with Cabinet in November, we will also be working through level 3, which are likely to be presented in November, but hopefully by then we will have a firmer view as to whether we will be receiving or how much new homes bonus we are receiving, which will tell us exactly what the budget gap is for 22-23. We will still most likely need to look at those savings, but potentially for 23-24 if new homes bonus is forthcoming next year.
Just one quick follow-up on that. The other point to make, I think, is that the commercialisation benefits that are shown in the paper are the ones that we know about now, having done the deals that we've done. There is still the potential for further benefits to be realised in that under that category. Yeah. So we just need to keep that in mind as well. Okay.
Yeah, I think we all understand that the process is evolutionary and it's a living process, and things will change day in, day out. And all we can do is make sure when it comes to committee that we have an accurate snapshot of where we find ourselves at that moment in time. Okay, I've got some bits I want to make, but I'm going to make them in debate, I think, to be honest. So we'll stay on questions. Councillor Butcher, is yours a question?
Yeah, I've got a fairly simple question. In the level 1 savings, is there a reason why we're not adding in an evaluation of the level of spend on Shapley Heath, given the reduction in grants that were actually made available for the work that's being conducted? It seems there's an awful lot of spend into the hundreds and hundreds of thousands there that's not being evaluated or considered. It feels like it would be appropriate to significantly reduce that.
Okay, that sounds like a reasonable question. Are you able to help Councillor Butcher out?
Well, I think we might actually address that in debate, might we not?
Okay. Is that all right?
I was just going to talk about the difference between a structural deficit, which is what we face here, which is a structural and ongoing deficit. Members will recall from previous reports that Shapley Heath funding at the moment is primarily set aside from a reserve transfer in previous years. Now, that reserve transfer will not deal with a structural deficit. No. We can't deal with an ongoing reduction in spend in the same way.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that reminder. That's helpful. Right. Okay. Are there any more questions before James moves the recommendations, which he's going to update, I think? No. Okay. James, over to you.
Okay. So I'm happy to move the recommendations, but I would like to add a new tier 2 business case for us to evaluate. And I suspect now would be a very good time for me to do that. So let me explain. It does actually touch upon the question from Councillor Butcher. One of the things that this administration has done, and one of our major achievements, is actually getting in place a local plan. And we are aware, because our officers are telling us this, and we are also aware of the changes which are happening in planning policy, that we will soon need to look at revising that local plan. And so I would like to propose that into the tier 2 cost savings, we should be looking at generating a business, not so much plan, but a business case for the cost-benefit analysis of starting to commence the preparation for the next local plan review. And notwithstanding the observations from Miss Foy about the fact that the expenditure that we have on Shapley Heath is actually, first of all, offset from a drawdown on reserves and should have been fully funded by grants from MHCLG, actually a investigation into a new settlement could continue to be investigated along with other options, such as urban intensification, as part of the local plan review. And overall, this should, going forward, be a more cost-effective way of getting us to having the next version of the local plan produced than actually the way it's currently being addressed. particularly given the government's recent backtrack on the promise to fully fund a focused investigation into a new garden community. I don't believe this is something Hart should be driving for on behalf of the government, whereas a local plan will in any event need to consider the various options to deliver whatever level of future housing growth the government calculate for Hart. We will need to evaluate the benefits and the issues with all such options. Then Hart Council, in consultation with residents, can make an informed judgment as to what solution or solutions best meet the needs of the people of this district, while fulfilling the demands from government for us to meet whatever housing targets they may lay upon us. And I mean, we in the community campaign have reached out to our local MP for some indication from him as to what he thinks our future housing needs will be. He wasn't able to answer that question. So, you know, this is something which will have to fall out through the derivation of a local plan. The work already undertaken on behalf of MHCLG will be invaluable for underpinning many aspects of deriving the revised local plan. And as I say, getting the current local plan through the various rounds of consultation, examination in public, and through to adoption has been a major achievement of this administration. We should continue to drive forward with the same focus as we needed previously to overcome the lethargy of the previous Conservative-led administration, who sleepwalked us into Grove Farm, Watery Lane, and nearly saddled us with Pale Lane too, which luckily we avoided by getting a local plan in place. So I actually would like us to draw up a business case to actually kickstarting the work on our local plan. How much is that going to cost us, and how long is it going to take? I'd like to add that to the list, if we may, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so that would be a new 21.13. Is that what you're saying?
Quite possibly, yes.
Sorry, in 8.3, which is the area we're talking about for level 2 business cases, there are, well, in 8.2 and 8.3, there are 12 existing items.
So it would be a 21.13, I think, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Is what you're suggesting, right. Yes. Okay.
Right, well, I'm happy to second that from the chair, but I've got some hands, so let's see what people want to say. As it's about the local plan, I will call Councillor Cockrell first, and I will call Councillor Cannell. Graham.
Thank you, Dave, Councillor Member. Yes, as Councillor Raleigh said, not entirely a surprise that he's added this in. The Shapley Heath Garden Village project was started on the basis of being funded mainly from MHCLG money, and then with potentially developer money being thrown into some of the studies, and then Hart topping up if necessary, should that not be entirely forthcoming or not be as much as it needed to be. Although MHCLG have been good enough to fund the project, certainly in the second round of funding, which we entered into, we didn't get as much money as we would have liked. And actually the process for getting that money was quite long and drawn out and complicated, for reasons that probably MHCLG are best placed to explain. What this has done is place, I think, some unintended consequences upon the resources internally within Hart. And therefore, at this moment in time, it's absolutely right that given our financial situation, as Ms. Foy is talking about, we have a structural deficit which needs to be plugged, that we're looking at all the options at this. In terms of the planning strategy, Councillor Radley makes a very good point in that the local plan that we currently have took us a very long time to get through, quite a lot of work. Some of us have only just recovered from getting it through. But it does show that if you need to do these things properly, you need to take the time to get the work done, so that when you're making decisions, you are confident that you're making the right decisions. So starting a local plan earlier rather than later is always a good idea, regardless of what your financial situation is or whatever other aspects there may be. So I fully support the idea of bringing in a business case on that to add to the 13. What I would also suggest, and I don't know whether this needs to be a 13.1, because it's slightly separate. This obviously is as a financial paper. But what I would suggest is that whilst we are working through that business plan and deciding on how we're moving forward with the place/planning strategy, that we pause further work on the Garden Village programme for now. We have meetings of the stakeholder forum and the landowners forum scheduled between now and November. It might be sensible to pause the work to therefore ensure that we're not going to have meetings that don't ultimately get anywhere if Cabinet decides in November to go in a different direction. So I don't think that possibly needs to be a recommendation for this paper because it's not a financial paper. I would like that noted somewhere so that the other Joint Chief Executive, who's the sponsor of the programme, can pick that up later. But happy to support Councillor Radley in adding that to the business case, and happy with the rest of the recommendations.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Cockerell. Councillor Cannell, Sarah.
Yes, just a small thing from me. I would just like to say that this is something which I've been concerned about for some time, you know, getting something down so that we can start on the new local plan. I think it's an excellent suggestion, which I will fully support.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, okay. Councillor Forster, Steve, welcome.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm sorry I was late. I was delayed at a residents' meeting. I listened with interest to Councillor Radley's comments, and I just wanted to query one thing on that, if I may, which was he said that government, if I can't quote it identically, but he said that they backtracked on their promise to fund a garden village. I don't think that's actually quite correct at all. They funded the elements that they said they would fund, and they've stopped funding any further element and only provided partial funding that Hart applied for. And I think it's bad form to try and say they backtracked on a promise, because there was no promise. So I just wanted that to be corrected.
Okay, well, what I would say is I think we all here believe in free speech, and in terms of opinions of the government and its actions, we're all entitled to our opinions, and freedom to disagree with each other is part of what happens in a functioning democracy. So I don't think I'll be taking that any further through the chair. Right.
Sorry, may I continue? Because I hadn't finished.
Oh, I apologise. I didn't realise. I thought that was your point. Okay, carry on.
Thank you, Chairman. I did want to say, however, that the idea of focusing on a new local plan was previously suggested by other councillors as well, including, I know, Chris Dawn previously. And it's good to hear that this cabinet is now on side from that. And I was pleased to hear Councillor Cannell's comment that she was, it was a small thing, but she's keen to start on a new local plan. I'm not sure I disagree with the approach. I'm not sure I agree with the approach that this cabinet is likely to take, but it's interesting listening to those comments. So I wanted to thank you for that. Okay,
well, thank you for the heads up that you might not agree.
I'm so sorry. When I said just a small thing, I made my comment. I wasn't going to say a lot. I was not talking about the, before I misquoted, I wasn't talking about the local plan being a... Okay,
that's fine. Right, keeping us back onto track of the item we have in front of us. The thing that I have found bemusing in my many years in local government in recent years has been that somehow we all managed to, between gritted teeth, still call this item the medium-term financial strategy document. Through no fault of the officers or the elected members of this council, whichever party they're elected for, you cannot do an awful lot of medium-term financial planning when you don't know what money you will be able to attract from one year to the next. I regret to say that the heady days were when governments gave us 3-year settlements, let alone 5-year settlements, which some of us will recall was the case. And the fact that the government in recent years, regardless of the makeup of that government, seem to think that they can do temporary fixes with one-off grants year after year after year. Local government as a sector cannot continue to operate like this. You know, the country has gone through an epidemic. Local government has been in the forefront of helping our communities get through that. And I think the government needs to make sure that it does a good, more than a belt and braces job on helping put our sector back on a firm financial footing. And that means whatever replaces new homes bonus needs to be decided upon and explained so we know what the financial situation is. And we need longer term settlements than 12 months because we need to actually do some financial planning. We're talking here about a structural deficit. The fact of the matter is we don't know if we actually do have a structural deficit. It doesn't look good. We quite possibly do. But until the government can actually give us some reassurance what funding they will or will not be given us in future years, it is very difficult. I don't believe any of the 33 district councillors got elected on an agenda to cut services to our people. None of us did. But we might find ourselves in a situation where we cannot afford to provide those services at the current levels in the manner that they've been provided today. And we need the government to give us a better understanding of what we are in a position to be able to do. And I think no one's going to argue with that. So in terms of the 7 points here, I think they all make perfect sense. I am a little leery about the item on the timetable because it presumes that we will have a wonderful, efficient government that will tell us before Christmas what they're going to give us. The government seems to think that giving us bad news at Christmas is still a Christmas present. I don't quite see it in that light. But what's being suggested makes perfect sense. We do need to build up the business cases for the level 2 savings. We may well come back here and have to look and dust off the level 3 savings if the government does not find it the means to help us have a method of funding our future service provision. We are the administration today. That will fall on our watch, and we need to guide the rest of council in making proposals for how we're going to do that. We must set a balanced budget. That's a fact of law, and we will all, I'm sure, make the tough decisions that we need to make. James, thank you very much for the change you've made there. I think you've hit the nail on the head. I personally was hoping that we could ride off the local plan for a few more years, knowing how much pain, energy and effort many of us, though not all of us, went through to try and get the last local plan through. But I suspect we are just going to have to bite the bullet. And if that's the case, well, let's commit to doing it now so we can make a good decision and hopefully the right one. Okay, is there anybody else who would like to speak on this item, or I'll just ask James to sum up? Okay, James, if you'd like to sum up for us.
Well, I think with your impassioned observation about medium-term financial planning and the situation that we're in regarding the notification period we get from the government on a year-by-year basis, you've kind of taken my summing up from me. But so just to simply say, I agree very much with what the sentiments of what you said there, Councillor Neighbour. I'm happy to move as it is being presented with the addition of 2113, which is to draw up the business case to support the generation of a revised local plan. Thank you.
Okay, so that's been moved and seconded by myself. Is there any further debate before I put it to the vote? Would I like to speak? No. Okay, all those in the room who have the vote, can you please show if you are for the amended motion? Thank you, that's unanimous. James and Emma, thank you both very much for that item. We now move to agenda item